Hello and welcome to my Principles of Economics class. My name is Mr. Jolanowitz. I will be going through basic topics that we'll be covering in our economics class. It's a one semester, one quarter class on our schedule. So let's just get right into it. Let's just get into the outline. So we're going to be going over the six main concepts or standard areas of our course, which are economic reasoning, America's economy in the global setting, federal government and the economy, the labor market, macroeconomics, and international trade. Then we'll go over a few examples, an online game that we will be playing, which is going to be the main one. It'll do a quick demonstration about how supply and demand works. Hopefully that'll carry us all the way through the time we have left. Anyways, let's just kick it over to the next one, which is economic reasoning. Economic reasoning is going to be a mostly vocabulary-based lesson, and part of the class will be going over the ideas of scarcity and choice, how those choices lead to benefits and costs, like costs of you have to pay for stuff, the benefit of you get from paying for it, incentives both monetarily and not monetarily, meaning basically how do you get people to do stuff, how do you do stuff, what makes you want to do stuff, how all this builds into resource management and property rights. So what's a non-renewable resource, what's renewable, how does our ownership of stuff contribute to this, and how our economy is managed, and overall just how does a market economy work. After that, we're going to move into America in the global setting. I use these pictures basically to go into how all these fit together, because we got our trade goods on the train, which is all of our manufactured stuff. We have our farming, we have manufacturing, the labor market, shopping, how all this fits together inside the global stage that is the world. How do we go from producing the thing to making the thing to selling the thing to shipping the thing? How do people all fit in together? Basically, that's just where we're going with this one. And after that, we have to move on to the federal government and the U.S. economy, how the government does things, it spends money on things like schools and roads and military, law and order, that kind of stuff, how that spending of money affects the economy overall, how it affects, prices, what people will do, how does it affect our incentives, how the government overall protects, consumer rights, environmental, the environment and property rights, how all those things interact with each other, and weighing when public action has to outweigh private needs and the trade-offs that are involved in that, which will then link back to the first one. Again, there's trade-offs to everything, just in general idea. And then after that, we're going to be moving into the labor market, how the labor market works, understand why different professions have different pay rates, understand how the interaction between supply and demand of labor affects what types of jobs are available, actually supply and demand of aggregate goods and services in the economy. Sorry about that. Understand the establishment of labor unions in this country and how the minimum wage and the welfare state affects the labor market overall, and then what influences the international markets are, like selling goods in the country that are made overseas, the mobility of capital around the world. It's a very, very all-around whirlwind of subjects. They all interact with each other in a way. Next, we're going to be going into macroeconomic trends, which is nationwide trends versus individual decisions, meaning interest rates, inflation, total growth, how all of those interact with each other. We'll be getting into how we calculate inflation, interest rates, unemployment, and how all those interact with each other to yield total growth. We'll also learn the difference between real economic growth, which is inflation-adjusted growth, versus nominal, which is non-inflation-adjusted growth, and how these aggregate things interact with the individual. So the macroeconomics is nation level, hence the picture of the United States, which I believe that is the national parks map, versus an individual, just a little clip art I found, and just how all of that works. Then we're going to be moving into international trade, and we need to understand how trade influences our economy, what specialization of trade is, and how that affects our economy overall, why certain countries promote or protect certain industries, and just how overall the value of the US dollar affects the global and domestic economy. This is a very Again, these are all like interactive things. It's more of a web. This is as a only way to come the metaphor for this is a web of how all these things interact with each other. There's a lot of interactions, a lot of intersection points. This is going a little bit deeper on how the international side affects us and how we affect the rest of the world. And just overall a thing we need to learn, which also sort of dovetails with our government class a little bit. And then we're going to be getting into the game that we're going to be learning or using to learn some of these concepts about how business works. So this is BizKids. It is a online resource that we will be using. It is, well, you play games. So you get your head in the idea of business. You do what it takes to make money. So there's 3 games. We'll be choosing 2 of them. Everyone will be running a bank, and then they'll be picking between the other 2. These are basically just little games. There's also like other lessons we'll probably be pulling out here in some of these other tabs. But overall, these are just games we'll be playing and learning to enjoy economics as a concept, how banks work, how does business work, what are the incentives behind it, can we put these concepts into practice, and that sort of thing. Go back to the thing, look it over. Then we're going to be also doing some activities with PBS Learning Media Lab. Again, when it loads up. Anyways, we'll be learning some videos from economics, how to analyze media, personal finance, interdisciplinary dynamics, just a whole sorts of things. There are a lot of stuff in the purview of economics that's interacts with a lot of different areas of economics in general. And then it's just like a brief wrap up to all of this before I end this. Let's just get to some examples. So examples are going to be... So we're going to start this off with just a basic supply and demand curve. So let me just get this together, get that. We have basic graph. I mean, we've all probably seen the basic supply and demand curve. Got supply. Let me do demand in a different color. Got demand here. Turns into this. Got a price there. Quantity there. And basically what we're going to explore as a course is how all these things interact, whether it be international trade, whether it be the labor market, technology changing the government, enacting policy, and all these different factors, how it's going to affect the aggregate supply, the aggregate demand. For example, let's just go, let me label this better. This one is going to be supply. This one is going to be, well, actually that's backwards. This is going to be supply. And no, that is going to be supply. This is going to be demand. Hold on, I have to make that a little bit easier, a little bit more distinct. Yes, that one's demand. Demand goes down as prices, or quantity goes up as prices go down. That's how that works. So basically, we're really looking into how things interact as like prices change, or supply changes. So, for example, what happens when we have foreign trade and that causes supply to go up? We have supply going up. What's that going to do for quantity? What's that going to do for prices? More or less what it's going to end up doing is it's going to end up increasing quantity. So we're going to have quantity 2, which is bigger. But we also could end up having slightly lower price, which is the idea of trade and why we trade internationally. This also could be an issue with technological development if we're able to make stuff more cheaply or more, and just in higher quantities, just because technology has advanced, could also possibly drive down prices. And then we'll also go into some of the ideas as to why we aren't necessarily going to see that all the time, like why prices won't necessarily drop, but when they should. It's going to be one of those big, all-encompassing interaction things that we're going to go over in this course by talking about things like trade offs, things like incentives, government actions, labor rights, and all that sort of issues.